I feel Spirit's peace and presence and power. Except when I don't. Right? So we know in metaphysics is full of paradoxes, right? That in spirit there's no duality. But then we're also human in this world where there appears to be duality. So sometimes things happen and sometimes those things seem bad, even though ultimately we know there's no bad or good, right? So sometimes things happen that appear to be bad and they can throw us off, right? And that's the beauty of spiritual practice. That's why we're here, because through spiritual practice we find our center even when things are going on that seem less than ideal. There's this great quote: when bad things happen, you have three choices. You can let it define you, you can let it destroy you, or you can let it make you stronger. Do you know who said that? Dr. Seuss. Very wise man. And Dr. Seuss was incredibly wise and wonderful, and we want to tweak it a little bit, because instead of define, destroy, strengthen, we want to say define, destroy, deliver. Right? Use the alliteration there. And also, we want to talk today about how you could say there's three choices, but another way to look at it too is when things happen that are challenging, we often go through three phases. And check it out. When something happens that's difficult, first it might define us, and that's not totally bad, because it means we're not in denial, right? Another D word. Like we're acknowledging this thing is happening, it's real. This thing is happening to me, and it's a challenge, but okay. So that's define. The key is you just don't want to get stuck in either of the first two, because then after define, you move to destroy, and destroy can look like everything is falling apart and you're devastated, and sometimes that is the first phase of big changes. But here, in Science and Mind, we know that destroy can also mean destroying our old beliefs. Our old beliefs about ourselves, our old beliefs about the world, old patterns that aren't working anymore, old actions that aren't panning out for us anymore, old relationships, old ways of being in the world, right? So that destroy phase can actually be incredibly painful, but also incredibly powerful, moving us to the other side of deliverance. Now we know how life is, that all of us at any time are going through in different phases of our life, being defined by something, being destroyed by something, and being delivered, right? All of us in different areas. So today we want to share, each of us, a story about moving through these phases and with spiritual practice emerging on the other side. And Melissa is going to get us started. Melissa?
Yes, see?
Okay. See you later.
One could argue that you just got us started.
Oh, that's true.
It occurred to me as they were saying I was going to get us started. So when I was growing up, I wanted to be a rock star. Now, I don't mean that like metaphorically, like I want to rock it at everything. Like I wanted to be a rock star, and I wanted to be a very specific one, actually. I actually ached to be Janis Joplin. Some people who know me, can see that. Yes, I am aware that Janis Joplin was a pretty raging drug addict who had a kind of tragic life and tragic ending, dying young. So that could have been a little warning, like maybe not the best person to follow, but I didn't listen to that. I followed in Janis Joplin's footsteps, including becoming a drug addict at 13 years old and all that. Yeah. So after college, I moved to the Bay Area to pursue my passion and my dream and my fantasy of being Janis. And after years there, I met this guy. So for the sake of the story, we will call him Tommy. That wasn't his name, though, but we'll call Tommy. Tommy was from LA, and he was in the business, and he actually was working with a really high-profile act. And he knew people, those people who know people. And he believed that I could be a star. So I liked him. Yes, he believed actually that I should be a star, most importantly, right? He really thought like that I was made to be that, and he wanted to help me have that happen. Again, I really liked him. So he was going to relocate me to Los Angeles, where it's all happening, and develop me and manage me, introduce me to the right people, and get me signed. And I would be on my road to living happily ever after as Janis Joplin Jr. I gave notice to the blues band that I'd been singing in for years in San Francisco. I gave notice to my apartment manager where I had been living for those years, and all of my music students. I had a lot of music students at the time. And I was all set to move to LA on March 1st. You can hear that music, right? Da, 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 da. In December, just a couple months before I was all set to like leave all these things and move, some weird things started happening. So the first thing was Tommy told me a story I knew wasn't true. He actually had told me a few things, but one in particular, I just knew that like that's not true. But it was kind of insignificant. It wasn't a big deal, and I'm not really a big fan of confronting people. So I just wrote it off. It was not a big deal. It was not a big lie. I didn't understand why he would lie about that story, but it was insignificant. So I let it go. But then, fast forward a few weeks later, another thing. So we had plans to start working together right after Christmas to be planning for when I get there March 1st. So I was going to fly to LA right after Christmas. And he said, you just give me your itinerary and I'll make all the plans because I'm your manager like that. I liked him. So I gave him my parameters, and he came back to me with my itinerary that had me leaving earlier than I said I could and getting back later than I said I could. And when I asked him about that, he said, well, the holidays. Flying in the holidays, I couldn't get you the flights. I couldn't get flights for the timing exactly as you wanted. So, I'm so sorry, but I tried, which made sense to me. Holidays, flying, right? This was all pre 9/11. So a few days later, I was talking with my best friend, Brian. Actually, we were getting high after a gig because I was still practicing being Janis Joplin. So we were getting high after a gig, and I was telling him how bummed out I was about this because I had to change all these things. It was very inconvenient, the timing that was going on. And I explained to him, but the holidays and everything. And he said, Melissa, I don't want to burst your bubble or anything. That doesn't make sense to me because you're flying from San Francisco to LA. There are so many flights from San Francisco to LA every day. They can't all be full except for like messing up your timing. That just doesn't make sense. And I think it's a really easy thing to find out about because you just go home and you call the airlines and you check with them. So those moments when someone says something and your heart like falls into the pit of your stomach? Yeah. So that was one of those moments for me because I knew he was right the moment he said that. And so, yes, I went home and I called. And even at that point, weeks later now, right, after I had this whole conversation about the flights with Tommy, they still had flights that could totally accommodate my schedule, my preferences. So I was crushed. I was very confused. Like, why would he lie to me about that? It didn't make any sense to me at all. And then, of course, what should I do about this? Now what? Now what do I do? So I was in the defined. What's the first one? Defined. I was in the defined phrase. So I was now fully in the dilemma of what do I do? It was all I could think about. I was so defined by it, right? You know how that happens? Something like that happens, and it is like, it defines you. Like, it is all that's going on. It is the lens through which you see the world. And so everyone I met and talked to, like people in line at the store at Safeway, I would ask them their opinion about, like, Why would this guy lie about this? And what should I do now? And I learned something along the way, which is pathological liars lie for no reason at all. Now, I had never engaged with a pathological liar before. Has anyone else had the experience of knowing oh, it's crazy making because there's no reason. And a lot of the world, we're used to reason. At least, I mean, the world's insane, but let's not go there. But we're used to, like, when someone lies, there's a good reason. And there was no reason. So he had lied to me earlier on those other stories that I had blown off because they were insignificant. And he had lied about the flights because he's a pathological liar. So then I didn't know what to do because I now understood the reason, but I didn't still feel clear about what I should do about that because this was my lifelong dream blowing up in my face. So I had a conversation in particular that clarified it for me. I was talking to my girlfriend and I said, so I feel like so torn because I feel like what's happening is my dream of my lifetime is knocking on my door. And if I don't move to LA, I am telling my dream to go away. And she said, I'm not sure about this, but you tell me, does your dream include having a manager you cannot trust? Oh, my heart went down to the pit of my stomach again because that was it. I couldn't do that. That would be really dumb. I knew it would end badly. I made stupid decisions back there, but that I knew I couldn't do. I couldn't leave everything, my whole reality, in my place, and all the people I knew, and entrust my entire life and my livelihood and my dream to this person that I knew I could not trust. It wasn't that I didn't know if I could. I knew I couldn't trust him. So I canceled. And then I took a nosedive into being destroyed by that. I mean, as you can imagine, it was my whole life was going down this path, and then it just, hit a dead end. There wasn't a new path there for me. It wasn't like I knew what I was supposed to do, and nothing felt right. I was used to, even then as a drug addict, I was living my life following my gut and my intuition. Sometimes it was clouded, but I did follow my passion, and there was nothing that sounded like what was mine to do. For a long time, I was really lost. I was very destroyed by the whole experience because I was depressed. I was grieving, which is a good thing, actually. And I had fully succumbed to being destroyed. The dream and the life and the story being destroyed. And finally, right around that time, a friend of mine who lived in Hawaii called me just to catch up. And when I told her what was going on, she said, this seems like a really good time to just come stay with me in Hawaii for a while. Just come visit me in Hawaii. I have a house for you. Just come live in my house for a while. That was the first thing. It was like, oh my God, yes. I don't have anything else happening. I canceled everything. And that was the first thing that had a resonance to it for me. So I decided this would be a perfect time to go to Hawaii and get some clarity, right? And to aid in that experience and that journey while I'm there, I will do a cleanse. That's very, go to Hawaii and do a cleanse. And this cleanse would include no drugs or alcohol because was a cleanse. Only problem was when I got there, I realized I don't know how to do a life. I don't know how to be alive without drugs and alcohol. I did not know how to have emotions. And I had a lot of big emotions going on. I was going deeper into being destroyed. And after I returned home, I just went back to drugs and alcohol. I made it through the time. But one thing happened that was suddenly very different experience, which was the drugs and alcohol did not work the way they had before. Because now I knew there was another possibility. I knew that it was actually theoretically possible to live without them. And that I would feel things that I was otherwise not feeling. I had been shown the world that I hadn't been shown before, and I couldn't go back. And so, after months of suffering, I forgot to do the counting this morning, but okay. Okay, so now 32 years, 9 months, and 21 days ago, on July 31st, 1989, I got clean. Yay! A very good thing, because otherwise, I would not be here to tell this story. Here's the thing. That was my deliverance. Because I was allowing, not even consciously, the destruction of the defined story being ripped apart, I allowed myself to be defined by it and destroyed. And because of that, I had the presence of mind to be delivered by getting clean and sober because of that story. It completely altered my life. And so, of course, like all those times that we've had in our lives where we look back and we see, oh, now it all seems so clear. Now I get it. And so today I say, thank you, Tommy. Thank you, air quotes, Tommy, for the compulsive lying and for the heartbreak of betraying me in that way. And it's one of the best things that ever happened to me. And thank you, Janis Joplin, for planting that initial seed of that dream. Because I walked down a different road, and Spirit, thank you, Spirit, most of all, the all, for delivering me. Because now I have found my way to my perfect expression of that dream. That Janis Joplin thing through my soul's expression, which shows up instead of singing blues in bars as singing about the joy of life as a spiritual person at divine and a life of the divine in centers for spiritual living, in places where people are doing that. Much more aligned for my being than the other, through which I'd be dead. So I'm also grateful I'm alive, and I get to do all this, and I get to do it all with my beloved wife. And I didn't have one of those before either, by the way. So if you had told me that I was going to be so happy about all of this, that December night when I called the airlines, oh no. I might have hit you, but I certainly would have believed you. You know? We all have these stories. We all, even if we're younger, we have these stories. Things that we thought were the worst thing that could ever happen that turn out better. So here's the thing that's so great is when we can get better at remembering when the defining happens to allow being destroyed. And remember that we will be delivered if we continue spiritual practice and listening and following. Because disasters are not what they seem. Sometimes disasters, bad things, they happen. They're hard. I'm not saying they're not hard. I'm not going to be one of those people. They're hard. And I'm not saying hard stuff doesn't happen. But no matter what it looks like, no matter how bad it seems, Spirit has not brought us this far to leave us. If we continue to walk in the faith of knowing that this is the highest and best for whatever reason we don't know yet, we will be delivered. What we call bad things are Spirit's call to our next level of good if we're willing to allow ourselves to be destroyed first so that we can be delivered. And with that, I deliver you, Reverend Z.
Thank you, Melissa. Okay, so here's my story. When I graduated from college, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. In college, I majored in English, which added to me having no idea what I wanted to do with my life. There's a joke about English majors. The chemistry major asks, what is the chemical composition of everything I see? The history major asks, what is the historical antecedent of life that I'm looking at? The English major asks, would you like fries with that? So here I was, a college graduate. I felt like I was prepared to speak English and serve fries. That was kind of it. So I kind of, just sort of tried a bunch of different things, and a few years after college, I found myself working at a farm, which was great because I'd grown up in academics, a lot of academics, and my dad was a professor, so I grew up around colleges and all that, and I just needed a break from all that, so I'm working on a farm, which was just a great change, Also, I identify as gender rich, whole lot of gender going on, right? At the time, I didn't even have those words, that language for it, but being at the farm allowed me freedom, right, to just express myself as how I wanted outside of the corporate world and the corporate drag, right? So it was great. I loved it there. About a year after starting to work there, the manager leaves to go start his own farm, and the owner, this elderly gentleman named Hollis Lovell, isn't that a great name? I love that name. He's from the South. Hollis Lovell, the owner, decides, okay, the manager's left. I should now run the farm. I knew nothing. But we'd gone to the same college, so he thought, that'll work. Now, at this point, I had discovered the spiritual path. So when I was 23, I had this total, enlightenment, blown open experience. And so I knew that spirit was real. I knew that spirit was guiding my life. And when I had that experience at 23, I'm like, okay, spirit, you're in charge of my life. I am following you now, right? So when I had this opportunity to run this farm, handed to me, even though it was scary and I didn't know what I was doing, I was like, this is spirit talking, right? I'm going to do it. So I did. So I'm in Massachusetts. It's a 4-acre vegetable farm on Cape Cod. It's really cool. And I'm the manager now, so I get to hire my crew. And there was about 6 of us in the summer, because that's when we were harvesting. But most of the year, we took winters off, but most of the year it's me and I needed one assistant. So I got to hire my best friend. I'm the kind of person who always has one best friend, right? I always have friends, but always my whole life I have one really close best friend. And this was my really close best friend. I'll call her Jane. So Jane was about 10 years older than me. She was a yoga teacher, so we had the same interest in spirituality and stuff like that. And so I got to hire her. She was my person. It was really cool, too, because a lot of what we were doing, planting, weeding, harvesting, we could talk while we were doing it, right? Because it's hands-on work. So there we were, side by side, all year round, working together and talking, sharing about spirituality and our lives and our dreams and all that. It was really cool. Now you're probably wondering, where's the whole define, destroyed, deliver thing, right? I'll get to that. So, after I'd been there about 6 years, approaching 7 years there, it's the end of the season, and I'm leaning over to pick up a 50-pound bag of limestone, and I have a little twinge in my back. The next morning, I wake up, and I am in extreme pain. Extreme back pain. Cannot get up. Now, at this point, I didn't even have a car. I'm riding my bike everywhere, so I'm totally immobilized. I cannot work. Now, talk about being defined by something, because it didn't go away. It wasn't just one day. This pain was just chronic now. I had to go on disability, so I am definitely being defined by this thing now, right? And I'm in my late 20s, and I'm, disabled. It was also really difficult emotionally, because I was stuck. I didn't know how to get out of this. I tried a bunch of different things for healing, right? Chiropractic, massage, physical therapy, acupuncture, bunch of different things. Nothing is working. So this is the one period in my life where I actually considered killing myself, because I was did not want to keep living. If this was going to be my life, I didn't want to keep living. I mean, the doctors gave me pills so that the pain would go away, but then I'm just knocked out, right? I didn't want to do that. I just couldn't live like that either. And I know now from psychology, studying psychology, that like the fact that I actually thought of killing myself and had a thought about how I would do it is really not a good sign. Like I was I was kind of serious about this, right? And I have to say I'm so grateful that I'm here now to tell this story. That didn't end like that. So I'm definitely in the destroy phase. So I'd missed the winter. We always took winters off. I'd missed the beginning of spring. I'm still on disability, can't work. But the things I was trying to do started to make enough difference, and I needed to go back to work too. That was like the order of the workers' comp kind of thing. So I needed to start to go back. And it was a few months into the season. So I'll never forget going back, and I see Jane, because Jane had been there for those few months, right, that I couldn't come back. And so I was reporting back to work, and Jane said, I have something to tell you. And I said, what? And she said, I'm running the farm now. And I said, well, yeah, I know. Thank you for covering for those first few months when I couldn't come back. And she said, no, I'm the manager now. And I said, oh, okay, well, why? And she said, because Hollis, the owner, Hollis says your pumpkins are too small. And she wasn't speaking metaphorically. I used organic fertilizer. And so because of that, the pumpkins don't look as big as you do when you use commercial chemical stuff, right? And that's what he wanted. I guess another old farmer was giving him a hard time that his pumpkins were too small. And he was, I can't have that. So I said to Jane, well, okay, so how long have you known this? And she said, oh, a few months now. And I said, and you didn't tell me? She said, no. So here I am. I'm back at the job, but I've now been demoted, and I'm still in constant pain. And now I've lost my best friend because she's totally uncomfortable with this whole thing and doesn't want to talk about it. But it's just the two of us there every day working side by side. Yeah, so levels of destroy, right, happening. And the only thing I had at this point in my life was my spiritual practice. That was it. So I clung to my spiritual practice, right? I prayed. I meditated. I read books. I found a spiritual community. And that was it. That's what I had. I mean, it's often during those times of destroy that's when we need our faith. That's when we need to really get centered in spirit. So that's what I did. And the first level of deliver came when a friend of mine in my spiritual community handed me a book, and she said, you need to read this book. And it was called Healing Back Pain by John Sarno. So John Sarno is a doctor he's passed now, but out of New York University on the East Coast, who developed a revolutionary mind-body technique for healing chronic pain. And so at this point, I had been in chronic pain for almost a year at that point, nonstop, day in, day out. And I read this book, and I apply his technique, and within 6 weeks, my back pain was totally gone. This is actually the workshop we're going to be teaching later is based on this technique. So that's my first level. So now I am out of pain, and I've got my health back. And that's when I again fell back on spirit, like, okay, what next, spirit? Like what? I'm in this dead end with this ex-best friend and job. What next? And I'm led through meditation to consider, well, what do you love most? What do you want? What are you most passionate about? And it was spirituality and psychology. So I look up programs. At this point, I went to the library, because that's what you did back then. I went to the library and did research, and it turned out then, because this is like 30, 40 years ago, the only programs where they had a spiritual psychology master's was California. That was it. Now there's way more. So I fly out to the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. I picked 2 schools. I applied. I got in. A month later, I'm driving by myself. I had a car now. Driving by myself in my little Honda Civic. I did not have a radio. So I had a tape deck next to me playing gospel songs all the way across country, because I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, Spirit, but you're guiding this, right? And when I look at it now, I see that was the beginning of deliverance in all areas of my life, right? Because it's like the pain, the method I use to heal the pain, John Sarno's work, is now something that I've used to heal other things, including chronic fatigue, and it's a method that keeps me healthy, to be proactively healthy all the time. I now have a best friend, the best friend ever, Melissa, and I'm doing a vocation that's much better suited for me. It's like that thing that seemed so destroyed in every area with my health and with my Jane and with the farm, all of those things catapulted me to that next level. And it was through spiritual practice that I got through. It was through spiritual practice that I was able to align with a bigger, wider, more expanded view of who I was, in the midst of things seeming horrible. Because when we see chaos, Spirit sees opportunity. And when we see devastation, Spirit sees new beginnings. And when we see closed, locked, boarded, shut doors, Spirit sees pathways to deliverance. Let us pray. So I invite you to take a breath with me. And exhale with a sigh. Inhale. Exhale with a sigh.
Spirit, carry me. Spirit, carry me. I can't see my way over, so I pray till you carry me.
There is one life, one source, one power, in and through all creation. Call it God, call it source, call it love. This is the truth of me. This is the truth of every one of us in this room, online watching, everyone on the planet, and beyond. We are made of this power, this mighty source, mighty love. And so I speak a word right here, right now, for each and every one of us, that we deepen our connection with Source now. That in those areas where we are being defined or perhaps destroyed by something, we center ourselves in Spirit, knowing that in Source there are answers. In Source there is comfort, there is love, there is movement, there is clarity. And as each and every one of us moves through to this place of deliverance in Spirit, we bless not only our own lives, but the lives of everyone we touch, moving out in ripples of love and beauty and wisdom and clarity and joy. And I'm grateful for this movement, for Spirit's grace in our lives. And knowing that this is done even better than I can imagine, I hand this, I give this, I release this to Spirit. And if you are in alignment with this prayer, please repeat after me. Amen.
Amen.
Ashe.
Ashe.
And so it is.
And so it is. Spirit.